Design Studio. So we welcome all of you. We thank you all for joining us. This is great. We also have Councilmember Freddie O'Connell with us tonight. So thank you, Councilman, for joining us. And we have a few other folks as well from my planning team, Eric Hammer and Anita McCaig, and Dontre, who's helping us from ITS, as well as the applicant team. So we are going to kick things off. Just a quick introduction. We will go ahead then and hand over the presenter wand over to the applicant. They will talk about the project at hand for about 15 minutes. Then we want to go ahead and leave the vast majority of the meeting time for questions, answers, a Q&A session with you all. We hope that you all, will bring your comments and feedback and questions to the table. And my colleagues and I from the planning department will go ahead and help moderate that part so that, as people have questions, you can either put them in the Q&A chat box or you can raise your virtual hand as we get to the Q&A portion, and we will go ahead and make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak. So welcome. This is the Second and Peabody project. It has been filed with an application for both an overall height modification and a community plan amendment, and those case numbers are seen here. So we're going to just, again, like I said, a quick introduction from our side. Oh, and there goes my screen. What happened? Oh, hold on. Sorry. Dontre, would you mind handing me back the presenter controls? I have a few more slides. Thank you. Apologies, everybody. Okay, so proposed community plan amendment study area, which you may have seen in your notice materials, is what's shown on the screen right now. There's 2 blocks in the study area, but the project itself is in this northern block right here. So we did want to just show this image. Of course, the applicant is going to speak more about that, but also just give a little context on the community plan, the downtown community plan, and the difference between the study area and the plan amendment area. So right now we asked the applicant to look at these 2 blocks as a study area because the proposed project does include a proposed realignment of Leah Avenue. So it does impact this fire hall site. But I do want to point out, when we talk about a community plan and a policy change, a potential policy change, which the applicant will speak about in more detail, it really would, that plan change would, the policy change would apply to the northern block here, which is where the project is located. So a little bit of background, and many of you may have seen these maps before, but they are available on the nashville.gov website. The community plan for downtown does outline different policy areas or in each of the parcels as you see here. So just to zoom in on the area in question again, the applicant is proposing a change from downtown neighborhood to downtown core policy. We are very, very excited to have this meeting with you all, with the community, because community feedback essentially is very, very critical to this community plan amendment process. We want to hear from you. We want to hear all of your thoughts and questions and feedback, because community plans such as the downtown plan here really do inform this and future decisions, as to the appropriateness of additional height or density in this area. So with that, Dontre, if you could pass the presenter controls over to Jeff Cunin. We will hand the mic over, and then I'll let the applicant go ahead and present their project, and then myself and the rest of the planning staff will come back in to help facilitate the discussion.
All right, thank you, Nora. Can you hear me? You can hear me? Okay, good. All right. Technology, oh boy. All right, so, are you able to see my screen too? Make sure that, okay, great, fantastic. I will move you off my screen so we don't also see you. But, okay, so I want to start by welcoming all the attendees who've been kind enough to devote some of your time to hear about our proposal. As Nora indicated, we'll be providing a brief overview of two topics tonight. One is a proposed modification to the community plan for Lafayette Subdistrict property, and two is a proposed overall height modification to support the development on that property. My name is Jeff Coonan. I'm an architect here in Nashville at Gresham Smith, just a few blocks up the street from the property. With me tonight is Kim Hawkins, a landscape architect and planner who founded Hawkins Partners Inc. and is also here in Nashville. The two of us will provide the formal presentation portion of the meeting. With us, we have Beth Ostrowski from KCI in Nashville, who has provided traffic impact analysis. Jeff Cundiff, our civil engineer from Bard's Design Solutions, headquartered across the street from the development, and Alex Patulli, who represents the Congress group who is leading the development.
Jeff, hang on one second. We're having a little bit of trouble with your audio, and I just want to make sure that everyone can hear everything you're saying. It sounded a little muffled.
Okay. Is that any better?
Yes, that is better. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I think it was user error. Okay. Moving on. To help orient everyone in this aerial at roughly the center of the page, you see a blue rectangle labeled site. This is the site, or this site is bordered by 2nd and 3rd Avenues and by Peabody Street and Lee Avenue. This is the location of the proposed development, the requested height modification, and the community plan development from downtown neighborhood to downtown core. Surrounding and extending 1/2 block to the south is a red rectangle. This is the extent of the proposed community plan amendment study area. So separate from the actual proposed change to the community plan, the study area is 1/2 block larger to the south. Both the development site and the extent of the proposed community plan amendment are contained entirely within the Lafayette subdistrict, west of 2nd Avenue. The development site and area of community plan amendment are at the intersection of 3 zones or zoning subdistricts within the downtown code.
Hey Jeff.
Yes.
I hate to cut in here. We're at our question and answer session where folks are chiming in is letting me know that it's still muffled and they can't understand most of the words. Is there a chance you have an alternative microphone or can move closer to the screen?
How's this?
That sounds much better. Let's see what happens.
I guess my range is pretty small here. So, okay. Well, I don't want to. Let me go back just a little bit here and make sure that we've heard everything on this first portion here. So to orient everyone in this aerial at roughly the center of the page, you see a blue rectangle labeled site right here. Site is bordered by 2nd and 3rd Avenues and by Peabody Street and Lee Avenue. This is the location of the proposed development, the requested height modification, and the community plan amendment from downtown neighborhood to downtown core that Nora referenced a moment ago. Surrounding and extending 1/2 block to the south is a red rectangle. This is the extent of the proposed community plan study area.
Hey Jeff.
Yes.
I hate to interrupt again, but it's becoming less and less intelligible as we go along. Is there a chance that maybe we can press pause for a second and have you call in on a phone line so that you'd be able to be heard? Because it sounds like some of the folks in the Q&A are unable to hear.
All right, I will press pause and give me a moment and I'll come back with a different option, okay?
Hey, Nora and Eric, do you mind if I jump in here? This is Councilmember O'Connell. If that gets set up.
Of course.
Great, thanks. So I just want to say I might not be able to stay the whole time. We've got a family obligation, and I encourage planning staff to go ahead and schedule the, even if I couldn't attend the whole time. So I want to mention to people, we do exercises like this on a regular basis, and sometimes things get approval, sometimes they don't. This project team, some of the members anyway, the underlying group has worked on the Four Seasons where we went through a fairly similar process. Downtown is growing and changing just like every part of Nashville. I think the scale of the growth tends to be a little different in downtown, particularly within the boundaries of the downtown code. And I think, for instance, the City Lights community is a brand new community since I have been in office. I was there for the groundbreaking very early in my first term. So we are seeing the neighborhood. I mean, it won't be, but in a matter of months, we will have residences at the Four Seasons project, which was not a residential community before. I'm here tonight, frankly, to listen and learn myself. I have been aware of this site for some time and have had some conversations with planning staff and the project team, but I will be seeing tonight with the rest of the community. Anything that I can't stick around for tonight and listen the whole time, I know planning is recording this meeting, and I do intend to go back and review questions and comments. For some reason, I'm not sure why, I don't seem to be able to post in the Q&A, but for anybody who needs to reach me, my email address is just my first and last names, Freddie O'Connell, FREDDIE .OCONNELL at nashville.gov. My phone number is 615-260-0005. I know a few members of the City Lights community have already reached out to planning staff and included me on those comments. Please continue. We've done this for a bunch of communities. The final thing I'll note while Jeff is here is this is all going to stay at the Planning Commission. Project teams and staff do a good job of keeping me in the loop of things that happen within the boundaries of District 19 and often within the downtown code, so I can be abreast of what is happening in the district. But ultimately, this is not going to be a decision that gets made by the Metro Council. It will be a decision that gets made by the Planning Commission. So just wanted everybody to have the background, and I will hand back to Jeff, who appears to be ready.
Are you all able to hear me?
That sounds much better.
Okay, the microphone is in my mouth now. All right, so I apologize for that. I think we thought that we had tested it out and maybe not tested quite enough. So, so I'm going to resume here, picking up where I left off after the orientation, making sure that we all understand where the site is that we're talking about, which is in blue, and where the plan amendment proposed change is. That is also only the blue site, and then the study area for the plan amendment, which extended south a half a block with the red dashed line. So wanted to emphasize that both the development site and the extent of the proposed community plan amendment are contained entirely within the Lafayette subdistrict west of 2nd Avenue South. The development site and the area of community plan amendment are at the intersection of 3 different zoning subdistricts within the downtown code. The Sobro subdistrict in red, the Rutledge Hill subdistrict to the east and to the south in green, and the Lafayette district to the west and the south in blue. Okay, the proposed development consists of 2 towers. The first is a 38-story office tower with a small limited service hotel to the north at the corner of 2nd and Peabody. And the second is a smaller 33-story tower to the south at the corner of 3rd and Lee, containing a 5-star hotel and residence. The base of the development consists of a mix of retail tenant space and entry lobbies for the various program components. An important feature of this concept is illustrated here. All of the parking and service for the entire site is located below grade. This key decision at significant expense is the catalyst for many of the benefits of the concept we'll walk through in a minute. In this illustration, we can see the massing of existing and proposed construction in the vicinity of the project, as well as the boundaries of the zoning subdistricts referenced on the previous page. 2nd Avenue is a major gateway route connecting the South Interstate Loop on the left side of the page through the Lafayette and Sobro districts into the iconic heart of Nashville's entertainment district. The blue tower on the right is the office tower, which is situated directly adjacent to the transition to unlimited maximum height offered by the Sobro subdistrict. The blue tower on the left is the hotel residential tower, which is planned to be roughly 155 feet shorter than the office tower. Because it is not directly adjacent to the Sobro district, we have pushed it to the opposite side of the site from 2nd Avenue and the transition to the Rutledge Hill district. So it fronts on 3rd Avenue. This aerial shows current conditions. Again, the development site and extent of the requested plan amendment outlined in the amendment study area in red. Today, the site consists entirely of private uses, 2 small industrial warehouse structures, a small office storage facility, and a lot of concrete and asphalt. Properties immediately to the north across Peabody are entitled to 30 stories or unlimited height via the bonus height program. Properties to the west, towards the top of the page, are entitled to 8 to 11 stories maximum, and properties to the east are entitled to 6 to 7 stories with bonus height. This diagram is a section along 2nd Avenue stretching from the South Interstate Loop on the left to Korean Veterans Boulevard on the right. Along this stretch of 2nd Avenue, there are 4 zone changes currently and 5 maximum height changes associated with this. To give a sense of how our proposal fits into a smooth transition in height from the lower density and historic structures to the south to the maximum density north of Peabody, we've struck a line from the top of a recently approved 9-story hotel adjacent to the historic Literal Lab building to the top corner of our office building. Because the hotel residential tower is 155 feet shorter than the office tower, it fits neatly beneath this control plane. Should the fire hall site ever be redeveloped, it would be entitled to a maximum of 11 stories and would form a reasonable transitional buffer between our proposal and the Rutledge Hill subdistrict to the south of the fire hall. This diagram is a section along Lee Avenue looking to the north. The proposed hotel residential tower is pushed west to 3rd Avenue, which allows 2nd Avenue to be fronted by a podium structure that's much more in scale with the other existing low-rise and historic structures to the south along 2nd, which we feel is a more sensitive solution than lining the entire frontage of Lee and 2nd Avenue with an 11-story wall. Given that the majority of historic Rutledge Hill structures are on Rutledge and further east, this places our hotel residential tower almost 2 blocks from the nearest structures of consequence. Therefore, for the following reasons, we believe amending the community plan for the block in question from downtown neighborhood to downtown core will provide overall benefit for the district. Number 1, it allows flexibility to accommodate a smoother transition in building scale from south to north. Number 2, it supports the density necessary to allow parking and service to be buried, which results in the potential for more scale variation, open space, and public amenities, of which we'll describe more in a few moments. And 3, it does not change the underlying zoning, therefore allowing stakeholders to negotiate solutions that are sensitive to site-specific issues. So that concludes the discussion on the plan amendment. Now we'd like to change our focus here to more specific discussion on the proposed development and the overall height modification. According to the Downtown Code, there are 3 criteria for overall height modifications: unique architecture, exceptionally strong streetscape, and improved relationship to surrounding properties. So we'll start with some exceptional and unique architecture. The views from 2nd Avenue looking north toward downtown illustrates the value of how the towers are oriented on the site. By presenting their slim sides to the south, we're able to maintain a view of the sky beyond through a gap in the towers. The balanced curves of the towers actually increases the apparent gap between the buildings and allows light to bend between the towers. The opposite corner placement of the towers allows us to bring forward on 2nd Avenue a much smaller scaled structure, more in keeping with the nearby existing structures, which you see massed in the white forms nearby. Viewed from the corner of Lee and Rutledge, the towers present distinct, graceful forms on the skyline while relating to each other in a clearly intentional way, almost resembling two sails. The breakdown in massing and materiality at the base, transitioning from glass to masonry and from high-rise to neighborhood commercial, is apparent from this view. Masonry and curves are also an important feature drawn from the surrounding historic Victorian architecture and translated into the architectural concept. This view is from Peabody and 4th looking east. Again, the strong tower forms can be seen to break down at the base, creating a series of smaller scaled structures and carved out voids that actually expand the sense of space and openness in the pedestrian zone. Skyline views, though, are just a tiny piece of the overall story. So I'm going to ask Kim to take us through the features of the ground levels.
Thanks, Jeff. Good evening, everybody. I'm Kim Hawkins with Hawkins Partners. We're landscape architects and planners. And as we look to discuss our streetscape and connectivity into the neighborhood, we look forward to talking about the pedestrian experience with you. So next slide. This site is really a connector between the downtown area to Sobro and on to Rolling Mill Hill and Rutledge Hill. And we know the importance of an active and engaged public realm. So we've provided active uses. The retail and restaurants are shown here in pink, along with the hotel and residential living lobbies along the street edges and within that internal courtyard to encourage flow through the site. So the retail strategy here would be carefully curated to make sure that we're creating a lot of activity and engagement during that process. We have no back door. All of our frontage provides for a walkable streetscape, in part because all of the parking has been placed underground. So it maximizes the accessibility and the engagement of the site. The site has been developed with a real pedestrian priority focus. Next. And in efforts to better connect and integrate with the adjacent properties, circulation both on and off site is critical as a part of that connectivity. So the project has realigned Lee at 3rd in accordance with the long-term transportation master planning to allow for better vehicular and emergency access at that corner. We also provide additional turn lanes at Peabody and Lee to improve our traffic flow. And while pedestrian access is encouraged along all street frontages, we see a direct connection through the 3rd Avenue side, which is easier to navigate to downtown, and then allow pedestrians to use Peabody and Lee for continuity to Rolling Mill Hill and Rutledge Hill. We're continuing the 3rd Avenue bike lanes along the west side of the site, and we're negotiating a 15-foot grade change on the site with a broad communicating stairway and public elevator through an internal courtyard to provide a variety of ways to engage and to circulate. The retail activity is multidimensional, occurring at each level of the development. And next. And perhaps we're most excited about the inclusion of a very high percentage of meaningful open space on this site. As you see, 37% of the site is publicly accessible open space. It's articulated through pocket parks, through the central interior courtyard, through a wide front porch at 2nd and Peabody, and street edges that outwardly engage the street and the passerby. The structures all sit within this canvas of plazas and landscape. Next. I'll take you through a few of those. This is the corner at 2nd and Peabody, where we have a wide porch facing east with an interactive water feature, sittable steps, and a perch that sits along Peabody so that you can do people watching towards the Rolling Mill Hill neighborhood. Next. This rendering of that front porch begins to show the covered porch gathering areas and the stone-inspired shallow scrim fountain that serves as a main office lobby entry and entry to the hotel and retail as the front porch steps up to accommodate the grade changes. Next. The face toward the more pedestrian-friendly 3rd Avenue engages with the wide sittable steps with landings that become a part of the placemaking and the energy of the site, with great visibility and social spaces integrated at multiple levels. Next. And here you see the retail engages at the lower Peabody Street level, along 3rd, and at the main podium level in the central courtyard, as you see that large communicating stair kind of make its way up with those social spaces integrated. Next. At 3rd and Lee, we have a completely different feel, one that really provides a little bit of respite with a pocket park here that's been created out of the alignment of Lee. It's a south-facing sun pocket with gathering nodes, places to work outside or to have a small event. Next. And very interesting, as this pocket park kind of nudges out because of that alignment of 3rd, it really forms a terminating view looking south toward this site from Sobro, and a great view back down towards downtown along 3rd. Next. The interior courtyard kind of holds it all together. It provides a permeable edge that welcomes passerbys in through the most active internal passageway between 3rd and 2nd. And we'll go through a couple of images of that, a couple of renderings of that area next. So this is that view coming from 2nd Avenue, kind of encouraging you in. I think it encourages a bit of discovery as you move through, and it provides ample light and air through the entire development, connecting that higher and more vehicular-oriented 2nd Avenue to the lower grade and the smaller street of 3rd. That next slide. This is kind of a view of that internal courtyard, and so you start to see those edges that are activated, as well as plenty of places for people to gather or just to hang out. Next. At 2nd and Lee, it's a prominent corner as one comes into Nashville, with 2nd Avenue being a major arterial, and the grade begins to drop towards downtown. Next. So this view, I think it really becomes a gateway of sorts here. We've tucked the porte-cochere for the hotel off of Lee, so it doesn't disrupt the street, and it provides a pedestrian scaled space with a ride share and gathering hub on that south face. And I think, again, as Jeff noted, we've lowered the height here, so it has a nod towards 2nd Avenue and towards the Rutledge Hill district, which is across the street. So this is a brief overview of what we have, and I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff.
All right, thank you, Kim. So just in summary here, I'd like to hit on the major points of the development that we think apply directly to the 3 criteria that I mentioned earlier for the overall height modification: unique architecture, exceptionally strong streetscape, and improved relationship to surrounding properties. The site has no back door. All the parking and building services are pushed below grade. That allows us to create major open spaces, almost 40% of the site dedicated to open space, something that would not be achievable with above grade parking structures and program pushed to the perimeter of the site. Many traffic improvements are going to be brought along with this, including the realignment of 3rd and Lee intersection, turn lanes on Peabody and 3rd. Pedestrians are first in this concept. We spent a lot of time thinking about how we can really change the dynamic of the area and set a new standard for expectations for a pedestrian first neighborhood. So we have wide tree-lined sidewalks, pedestrian infrastructure improvements. Actually, off-site at 34 intersections throughout the district are included in this project. We are really interested in ways that we can green the district. Almost 6,000 square feet of public green space, major amenity at 3rd and Lee, all developer funded and maintained. Solving the canyon effect, the towers on opposite corners leave plenty of room for lower massing throughout the rest of the perimeter of the site. So no edge of the site is completely dominated by a tower. And then lastly, we really tried to remember the past. It made extensive use of brick masonry, recalling details and geometries that exist in part today and existed in the past, back when this was a residential scale neighborhood. So that is the end of our presentation. So I will turn this back over to Nora and Eric to handle the questions and answers.
Hey everyone, this is Eric Hammer. Just checking the Q&A. We will be looking and I'm monitoring the raised hands in the section here. When I see a hand, which I'm seeing one now, I'll call on you and ask Dantre to unmute you so you can ask your question or give your feedback. Alternatively, we do have a Q&A section, so if you would like to, or rather type your answers there or your questions there or your feedback there, we will be able to read that out loud if you do not want to physically speak into the microphone. So with nothing else to do, I will keep monitoring this and see who raises their hand. It looks like we have one up, Brian Capelli, but that's been up for quite a while. But let's see, Dantre, can we recognize him? Hi, Brian, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can't. I was just saying that earlier on I couldn't hear.
Okay, well, thank you. We appreciate that.
I apologize for that.
Okay, it looks like we have a couple of raised hands. First, we have a question in the Q&A. Are the slides and/or presentation available later for review?
Yes, they can be. All of this material is also, I believe, available through the Metro Planning Department's website, but it looks like we have left an email off of this slide. Oh no, it is here. I'm sorry. Excuse me. So if you look at this slide, there is an email address that you can send further questions to later, or you can contact us and we can provide you a copy of this presentation. And it says info@hallstrategies.com.
Thanks, Jeff. We have two hands up in the attendee list. I'm just going to go with the first one that we saw. Let's go with Sandra first and then Rakesh.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to say that your proposed building it's a beautiful plan. I'm a resident of City Lights. My main concern is the height of the building, and I understand that you have tried to mitigate that through the scaling of the building and the design, but this sets precedents for changing other lots that may be developed. So while that's a block away from us, we have an empty lot with, I think it's a TV station or radio station that conceivably could be built with another 33, 38 story building. So it's, the slippery slope of approving one and then our whole neighborhood is now in a situation that the residents of City Lights have significantly have a significant investment, and it affects our investment. So that's my main concern with approving it. We all relied upon the zoning of that was put forth by the city as to what the neighborhood would be, and we're disappointed now to see that that is being looked at as changing, since that was a very important part of our decision making. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, I can offer from our perspective, I think to address your concern is part of why the plan amendment is so narrow and that we didn't consider a larger area. There were some things that seemed appropriate given the significance of 2nd Avenue and our adjacency to the Sobro district that seemed to make sense for this site that may very well not make sense for other sites. So I think, as I said earlier, the nice thing about the plan amendment change being so narrow is that at least with regards to this project, it's a fairly surgical solution that does not change the underlying zoning and therefore requires this kind of discussion in order to reach agreement on what should be done.
Okay, wonderful. I'm seeing another hand raised up from Sandra. I think that for the purposes of moderation, if we can maybe do one follow-up question from each person, and then we can move on to the next person. I feel like that's the most fair, so we preserve the order, don't get stuck on one person, but also are able to hear if there's any follow-up questions without having to repeat this whole process. So if we can unmute Sandra, and then we'll move on to Rakesh after that.
Yes, my follow-up question would be, what is the city's ideas if another developer wanted to do something at another site and they build, where it's not such a slimline profile? So my question is to the city council regarding that.
So, Sandra, just I think that question might have been for Councilman McConnell. I'm not sure if he's still with us. I think narrowly we're kind of focusing on this particular plan amendment at this point. I'm not sure if we can speculate on future plans or future plan amendments. So if you want to reach out to the council member to see what particularly he would have in response, because it sounds like the question was initially for him, I encourage you to reach out. His email address is available on the website, and you can follow up with me afterwards if you need a copy of that as well.
Hi, Eric. It's Anita. I just want to jump in. Sandra, are you asking if this is a precedent, if this could set a precedent for the next area coming in and asking for the same?
Hey, can we unmute? Okay, thank you.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Yes, because I think you're making a good point there that yes, an adjacent property owner could come in and ask for a similar change to land use policy. They'd have to go through this public process too. But when you look at changing land use policies, that's the future vision. You do look at what's going on around there and what other activity has been happening.
Thank you.
All right, if we can unmute Rakesh, it looks like he was next.
Yeah, good evening. I have a question for you regarding your community plan. I do recall seeing the first part of your presentation. We had a couple of red lines that encompasses some adjacent property on 4th and Leah. But and does that, in your plan amendment, I was a little bit foggy about, is that going to include amendment of those parcels also in terms of the height restriction and the changing of the code? Or is that just part of the study?
So in this diagram, you may want to mute. Okay, thank you. So this diagram, you can see our site. Everything in blue is the block that's bordered by 2nd Avenue and 3rd Avenue on the left, and then Peabody to the north and Lee to the south. The plan amendment only applies to that site, that one block. The study that informed the plan amendment was expanded to include the fire hall, basically half of the block to the south on the other side of Lee, because we were physically relocating Lee or to realign it better with its intersection at 3rd. Which is currently an offset intersection that is not great for traffic and not great for pedestrians. So it's a very limited area of study, and the area of the plan amendment is even more limited. It is only this area with the dashed red line that's on the screen.
Thanks, Jeff. It looks like Rakesh has a follow-up question, if we could unmute him as well.
Oh, thanks for that clarification. The reason I ask is I'm part of a group that owns a large piece of property on 4th and Leah, which is directly, to the east, I believe, of your site. Yeah, exactly, right there. So we're just wondering that if, by this zoning change, would that zoning change be bleeded over to 4th and encompass that entire block from 2nd to 4th? Or is the city's view that, this is going to be on a case-by-case basis in terms of changing it from the downtown neighborhood to the downtown code.
I'll defer that to the city.
So the present plan study area is shown kind of in red there, as Jeff alluded to before. But in terms of future plan amendments, I don't think we have enough information to look at that, just because the plan amendment study area is pretty limited in this particular instance. So I think that, as Anita mentioned before, that folks can submit things in the future. However, it would be considered as kind of the same way as this public process is today. So I don't think we have a crystal ball to know what the consequences will be at that specific block, just that those would need to happen via some separate application in the future. So that was a initial question and a response. I do see one question in the chat, and then what we'll do is we'll go back through the list of folks that are hands up. Looks like we have Sandra and Rakesh also have their hands up again. So we'll go with Lisa's question in the chat first, and then come back around just to keep it going. She says, is the city making tax concessions for this development? That's a little bit outside of our jurisdiction, so to speak, in the planning department. But my understanding, at least I have not heard anything about that particular aspect. Jeff, can you speak to that?
I can say only that, to my knowledge, there is no tax concession from the city involved in this. And all of the infrastructure improvements are project funded.
Okay, with that, let's see. Looks like Steve has raised his hand. Can we unmute Steve Snyder?
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you giving me the time. Real quick, just a point of clarification. I've had a pretty significant email exchange with you and other members of the staff, and I would ask that that be introduced into the record in this matter, so that I don't have to take the time to raise those questions and address the responses that you've previously provided. Is that acceptable?
I'm trying to figure out what you mean by into the record. We definitely exchange information about the basics of this particular site, but can you clarify about what you mean by on the record? Just trying to figure out how this would fold into this meeting.
I'm assuming you're collecting feedback from the community as part of this process. And I would like the email exchange that you and I and others on staff have had to be part of those communications.
As part of the
Sure.
case file, right? Added to the case file, right, Steve?
That's correct, yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you, Anita, I appreciate that. Secondly, I just want to clarify, because I believe Jeff suggested that if the fire hall site were in the future sold, it would be limited to no more than 11 stories, which is the Lafayette sub-district. If this is approved as proposed, is that correct?
So the community plan amendment is limited to the site in question, which is north of the fire hall. My only point in bringing up the fire hall was to say that the fire hall is part of the Lafayette sub-district, and there is nothing about our request that involves changing any of the entitlements of the fire hall site. So it's a one-story building today. I don't know if, when, or whether the circumstances might arise the city chose to relocate that. But if they did, and that were to be developed, it would be limited to 8 stories is the maximum height, or 11 with bonus height.
I must admit, I misunderstood, because I thought the proposal here is to move that into downtown core, the T6 DC, which would not have the same height limitations as the Lafayette subdistrict.
Hey, y'all, I'm going to jump in here. This is Joni Williams with the planning department. I think we need to be very, very careful with terminology here. And I think some some terms of art are being used incorrectly. So let me explain. This block as a proposal and the fire hall block are being considered for a policy change, or also called a plan amendment. So it would affect both blocks. That plan amendment informs requests for additional height. It does not change entitlements. It simply gives the Planning Commission direction if and when they are considering changes to height. The second request that this property is making is for an overall height modification, which would apply only to their block and does not apply to the fire hall block, and does not change the entitlements of the fire hall block. It only changes the entitlements of the proposal, the private sector proposal here. So those are two terms that I think we might be using a little interchangeably, or a little, we just need to be careful with that terminology. So the plan amendment or policy amendment, those are interchangeable terms, are for both blocks. The request to change the zoning or to change the entitlements is limited only to the northern block. And so the southern block, or the fire hall block, if the plan amendment would move forward, the Planning Commission could in the future consider greater height, but it would not be entitled to that greater height. I hope this is helpful clarification.
It as a result of this be in the downtown core subsection, correct?
Yes, in policy.
Okay,
It does not change entitlements. Yes, and let me clarify just a little bit further. This process of community engagement and hearing your questions and thoughts may result in a change of the boundary of the community plan amendment. It may expand, it may contract. That is part of this process too, is to make sure that we have carved the right boundaries. So we invite your comments and thoughts on that as well.
Understand, and along those lines, I just again want to make sure that the record indicates you send out notices to all properties within 1,300 feet of the subject property. Those notices were postage stamped or mail stamped on Friday, the 12th of February. Presumably, I don't know this for a fact, but presumably they sat in the county offices through the snowstorm and were not picked up until Monday of this week, because we in City Lights did not receive them until Wednesday of this week. So unfortunately, I think the 48 hours of notice that we've received has limited the public input, as you suggested, which was the purpose of this meeting. So that's simply an observation. Now to my question. Presumably, if this modification is made, the value of this property with the densities that would now be entitled on this property would significantly increase the value of this property. As a result of that, I would ask the question, is there a shortage inside the existing areas that are zoned for high rise in the downtown core, such that a project of this scope and scale can't be completed within the existing boundaries, that is necessitating the need here to look at this peninsula modification? Because I think it was brought up earlier, you're going to have people coming in from the east side of 2nd, from the west side of 3rd. Everybody is going to latch on to this peninsula and say, look, pretty much as has been said here, we're at the intersection of these three zones. Why don't you just redraw the line? And that's the mistake that I made as an investor in residential real estate here at City Lights. I looked at the lines on the map and didn't really give much credence to the fact that those lines could be erased, as is being proposed here, and moved into what has been defined by the city plan as a downtown neighborhood. And that's my fault. That's my mistake, my shortcoming in my due diligence. But I would ask, as the developer looked at constructing something within the scale of the Lafayette subcode or subsection code on this parcel? And if not, why not? So that's my question. Thanks for the time.
Well, I can offer a little bit of insight into that as the architect. I can say that the current limitations of density on the site are such that a maximum 11-story building could be built with bonus height, but the entire volume of the site would be required to even approach feasibility. The result would be above ground parking. The result would be sort of a super block of 11-story structure. So, and even then, it's not clear to me, and probably not for me to say, whether that necessarily pencils. Our concept was to develop something that we felt would actually be a vast improvement in the pedestrian experience of the site, and would set a new standard for how to develop dense developments and still maintain expansive public spaces.
Okay, guys, between that question and the last, it looks like there's several different folks. We had a lot of questions between those two, so we're going to try to get to all of them. Let's see. And sorry if we're I'm trying to scroll back. Looks like Hattie asked a question. Okay, so we can unmute Hattie, but it looks like this is the same question about, it says, can you explain what might happen to the firehouse? As you said, it will be under study. Also, is the little park at Leah and Second protected from development? I think one of those questions has been kind of talked about before in a previous, but this, Patty, do you mind either unmuting or we can have the developer respond to that second part?
I'm happy to answer that, Eric, if the question is about the park at Lee and Second protected.
Great, go ahead. That'd be great.
So thanks for the question. And I think one of the things that's unique about this process is that for overall height modification, all of the things that we are showing here are become agreed to. And it's almost it's a commitment to the community, to the city, for this developer to create this in this particular way. And so the open space that you see here, including the area at Leah and Second, does become protected from development. It is the cost of that development would all be borne by the developer, and the maintenance of that would also be borne by the developer. And that is true of all of these spaces, whether it's the front porch at Second and Peabody, whether it's the internal courtyard, any of the streetscape, and absolutely the little park, as you mentioned. I love that you call it that, because that's, I think, what it really will be, a little pocket park at Lee and Second. So all of that would become permanent, publicly accessible open space.
But that, I'm sorry, can you hear me? Am
Yes.
I unmuted? Okay.
Yes.
I'm not talking about your development space that you've described. I'm talking about the park that exists between Lee and Peabody. I live in City Heights like Steve. Steve and I live on the same side of the building. We will be looking at, this is, you know.
Oh, I think I understand. Are you talking about on the Cumulus site, the site between the site that's on the east side?
That. I think it's historic. I think it has some protection, but I don't know, because now you all are coming in and asking for all kinds of concessions. So is there, again, with Steve, who's just asked questions, and I live on the same side of City Lights, we enjoy our view now. We enjoy our little green space. And if you're to put up 34 and 38 feet, just a few yards from us, will we still have confidence that the park that's there now stays there because it's historic? And that's probably a question for the city, not for the developers.
You are correct, Hattie. I do apologize. I misinterpreted your question.
It's okay.
So
Okay.
I will let.
From the city, please answer that question. Eric, I guess.
So yeah, Hattie, that entire parcel is privately owned. There's no easement or any other type of city ownership of that block. I believe it has some type of historic marker for what used to be there, a home that was on the site.
Right.
But in terms of
The Ryman Mansion was there.
yes, but in terms of like existing protections for that portion of the site, or really any portion of that site that's off to the east of this particular proposal, there are no existing protections for that in terms of zoning.
So the owners of that could sell it and turn it over to Congress, and they could build another 34 and 38-foot building right there.
Well, I mean, I can't speak to that particularly. Obviously, there'd be a public process involved with any future plans of the site that would go outside of the current zoning entitlements and boundaries. But yes, there, just to be clear, there is no protections currently for that that fenced-in area of green space.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to try to catch up on some questions, so please bear with me for a second. Let's see. So to Rob, just as an FYI, the raise your hand function is at the bottom left of your screen if you are using a computer. It looks like you're trying to raise your hand, but if we kind of mute Rob, I'd appreciate that. It looks like he's next in line.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rob Lowe. I'm the president of the Hal Park Partners partnership that's immediately to the north of the site. So I come at this from a different view. We sit between 2nd and 3rd Avenue on KVB. And while I do appreciate the consideration everybody's going through as they think about the rezoning of the density or added density and height on the site, it strikes me that the in-place zoning drives what I consider sort of to be monolithic development. We've seen some of that well to the south of here with some multifamily development, and I'm very much in favor of the added height because it allows for the architectural design, the enhanced walkable nature of the site, the pedestrian access. And so I just wanted to offer that while it is an increasing of the in-place zoning that's in excess in some ways of what we have on our land, it is I think it's contributive to the neighborhood and appropriate to have that kind of density in the urban core, especially when we get the architectural effort. So just want to lend my support.
Okay, I'm going to try to, we have roughly about 10 to 12 people that have either raised their hands or added questions. So if I don't get back to you in the precise order that you have raised your hands, I apologize. We're trying to do the best we can without kind of a time stamped here and making sure that everybody gets a chance to ask questions. I think I have, looks like Mike Hayes next in terms of who we saw raise a hand. And I do see you, Steve. We will get back to you before the meeting is up. We do want to get some other folks who haven't spoken yet to be able to answer and ask their questions.
Am I unmuted, Eric?
Yeah, it looks like we can hear you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, I appreciate your time, Jeff. I appreciate your presentation and think this is some of the best work I've ever seen out of Gresham. And same to you, Kim. The park, the underground park, the thoughtfulness of the site, the realigning of the street is exceptional. You know, we've owned the blocks that are north of Korean veterans from 1st to 3rd, KVB to Malloy, and then additional property from 1st to 3rd, Malloy to Demonbreun. And I participated in the 2003 and 4 community plan updates where this neighborhood was core frame, where we were limited to 5 stories in height with sky plan exposure stacks after a couple of stories. And to see the evolution from 0304 and that community plan to this possible amendment today is just incredibly exciting. You know, we laid out a vision in the late 90s and even early 2000s that downtown could and should expand. And to see the ability to have 18-foot sidewalks, 14-foot sidewalks, a street grid that's straight, where every street south of Demonbreun straight from east to west is exceptional. I certainly want to lend my support to the project. And as we think about how downtown grows, you know, somebody asked, well, you know, could the developer look somewhere else? There really are blocks that are available north of Korean Veteran that are in the core that have the 30 or 40 story height remaining. And so this is a natural expansion of the core to the south. You know, we certainly think about the downtown area as everything inside of the interstate loop. You know, we supported City Lights when that site went from 5 to 7 to 11 stories. Don Meeks, the developer, you know, went through a rezone or a similar process to upsize the height. So again, I guess I want to lend my support to the project. Really excited about it. I hope it comes to fruition. The question that I asked was really to Joni, is what happens next? You know, so we have a community plan amendment. We have a modification to the height. I would assume that there would be commission, there would be MDHA review. What's the process for this to continue?
Sure, Michael, thank you for the question. I'm going to actually open that up to Nora or Eric to answer. They're familiar with the calendar and know the next steps in this process. And I will add that these dates are all, you know, open to change if the conversation needs to continue.
Hi, and Nora, please contradict me if I'm incorrect in this, but the current schedule would have the item going to the Planning Commission on the 25th of March. As Joni just said, that those things can change as schedules adapt after this meeting. So just as an FYI, that is where it is scheduled now. It may not be scheduled like that in the future, but that is where it is today. So moving on right along, I have, looks like a question.
Eric, if I could just chime in there too, that meeting at the Planning Commission is also a public hearing, or is the public hearing. This is a community meeting that's required by the Downtown Code and by the Community Plan Amendment process. But the actual public hearing and where a decision would be made by the Planning Commission is that March 25th date.
Thank you for that clarification. And it looks like I have Mark Evans next, which I'll just read his question out. He says, as a current owner at City Lights, it is my understanding that the developers of City Lights requested something, a somewhat similar height amendment, and it was rejected. What differentiates this project from the prior City Lights request? I'm not sure if the applicant team has the ability to respond to that. That's about a case that I think was well before their time. I can't speak to that either, unfortunately. From what I can tell, there was nothing officially filed, although this has been referenced several times for that particular project. So an answer that I would give you would unfortunately probably be inadequate. But we can follow up with more information comes to light. Okay, Denise, I think that your question was answered before, but please correct me if I'm wrong, about the homeless folks that are currently within the area. Anita has an answer in the Q&A that I think addresses that. Mike, I think we just got you on the attendee list, and I think that your question was answered there. Caroline Eller, she says, please talk more about how this design and height relates to and is informed by nearby historic areas, specifically Rutledge Hill. Masonry was mentioned, but looked to be minimal. Are there any completed projects that at similar DTC, DTN, I guess I mean downtown core, downtown neighborhood transitions?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question, Eric? Were there two questions there?
I can read the full thing again. So it says, please talk more about how this design and height relates to, is informed by nearby historic areas, specifically Rutledge Hill. That's one question. And then masonry was mentioned, but looks to be minimal. Are there any completed projects at similar DTC, DTN transitions? Those are three questions, but they're all somewhat interrelated.
Okay, thank you. And I think I didn't hear the masonry part of it initially. So what we attempted to do with this project is develop a concept that located our office tower directly adjacent to an intersection where two of the blocks on the intersection were entitled to 30 stories to unlimited. And in that respect, what we were contemplating there was not really any different than what the Rutledge Hill subdistrict faces as you cross from its boundary on Peabody north to the Sobro subdistrict above. So we felt that we were, immediately adjacent to and part of a context that was already allowable in zoning in that respect. The second tower we made significantly shorter than the first tower. We pushed it to the opposite side of the block so that it's aligned with 3rd Avenue instead of 2nd Avenue. And then we also tried to think about how it relates in terms of an even slope from the scale of the buildings that are on the south side of the fire hall and part of the Rutledge Hill district on the west side of 2nd Avenue, and let that line begin to inform the maximum height of our residential tower, which you see the residential tower in this image is in light blue, screened back on the opposite side of our block, and the office tower is here in darker blue. By pushing the parking below grade and by shifting the towers to opposite points, opposite corners of the site, what we were able to do is what you see here, which is present the experience of driving along, walking along 2nd Avenue with a building mass that is roughly equivalent to the building masses on the other side of the street, actually lower than some of the proposed and approved concepts further to the south, actually inside the Rutledge Hill subdistrict. So our sense was that within the realm of possibility of the program that we were placing on the site, that we were doing things that were meaningfully sensitive to the experience at the street scale, at the pedestrian scale, at the automobile scale, to the districts. We also felt relatively confident that the truly historic elements of the Rutledge Hill district that are adjacent to or near our site really are on the opposite side of the block. So at this point, you have almost nearly 2 blocks of distance between the historic buildings that front Rutledge and our residential and hotel tower. The masonry at the base of the building is fairly extensive. It lines the base of the office tower at the lobby. It covers all of the retail space on the corners of the site, third and Peabody, and then, sorry if I'm moving ahead here, and then 2nd and Lee. So everything along the ground level is brick masonry, and that is the predominant and dominating material of the ground level of the building.
And Jeff,
Last,
I was going to add one more thing, because I know there was another question kind of tucked in there asking about projects at a similar DTC DTN transition. And I did just want to mention the one that we've both been involved in that is in exactly that same location as far as straddling DTC and DTN is Circle South office, which is at the roundabout that goes from, that's the transition also from Sobro to Lafayette.
Right.
And that one, and you see it here, you might point it out on the screen, Jeff, but that one has received an overall height modification. It does straddle that. It does sit in the Lafayette district, but it has a small piece of it that is also related to the Sobro. The Lafayette district allows 16 stories with all of the height, bonus height, and this one received an overall height modification for 30.
Are you able to see my?
Yes, for very specific reasons. So anyway, that was the one that came to mind when I saw that question, Caroline, because that was passed about a year ago.
Are you able to see my cursor? I'm trying to point out the building here.
I can see your hand on it. So I'm
Okay.
hopeful it's right at the edge of the roundabout for those of you who might not be familiar. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. We're going to try to keep moving along. If you have your hand up and you've already asked a question, we will be with you. We're trying to get to folks who haven't had theirs answer yet. I think Greg has been having his hand up for quite a while. If we could unmute Greg. That would be Greg Breitz. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm a resident of the City Lights condominium building on Rutledge, and also happen to be the president of our City Lights Homeowners Association. So I want to appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk about this overall height amendment and community plan amendment to the downtown community plan on this project that we're talking about. So as you probably know, we're the recently completed condominium building. We've got 71 residential units and some commercial space, but for 1 or 2 units, all have been sold. And I think we were among the first kind of mid-rise residential buildings developed in the T6 downtown neighborhood. The project here was promoted by the developers being of opulent residences that allow you to experience Nashville in its most divine, offering everything sophisticated urbanites need. I reference that only because the purchasers of the residential units at City Lights were proud to be among some of the pioneers participating in the redevelopment of this part of town. However, one of the things that the sophisticated urbanite expects is that the local government will abide by its rules and regulations and respective community plans, upon which the purchasers of the residential units here made significant investments in that redevelopment effort. And so to that end, we note that the proposed amendments related to these 2 structures is really unprecedented. And you know, the buildings are going to dwarf the 8-story City Lights building, casting us in the shadows of the towers for much of the day. Obviously, that we believe would have materially impaired both the quality and the value of the investments that the people have made here. As such, at the board level, we're adamantly opposed to the proposed amendments. We think it's inconsistent with you know, what the original plan was. And, you know, while we welcome investments in the neighborhood, we will pursue whatever legal avenues are available to prevent this. And we respect that the NPC, the Planning Commission, make clear to the applicant that it needs to revise its proposal to comply with the existing zoning requirements. So, you know, love to see development going on, but this is not from our perspective in the best interest of the neighborhood and those who were some of the early adopters for moving down here. Thank you.
Hi, Greg.
Thank you for that.
This is Anita. I just want to jump in. You know, we hear your concern, and, you know, we hear that from people oftentimes when any changes are proposed. I just want to reiterate that, you know, a property owner can apply for a rezoning change at any time. And and landowners and property owners and their representatives can also ask the question, can they change the plan amendment? So this is something that in a dynamic city like Nashville, you know, that as residents, property owners, and business owners, you always have to pay attention and be aware, because these requests do happen quite often.
I completely respect the fact that they happen. I think there was a community plan that, you know, kind of suggested that this would be an area that, you know, 11 stories would be adequate, and, you know, would respectfully request that we, you know, that's the reason. That was what enticed people to move to the Rutledge Hill area. And, you know, once you take the genie out of the bottle, it's hard to get it back in.
Thanks, Greg. Just to clarify also, we are listening to feedback at this point. I just want to clarify that we have not given any final decisions regarding this.
Nope, understand.
Yep, so I just wanted to be really clear there so everybody understands we are definitely still listening to input. That's part of the process. And we appreciate you entering that kind of in as feedback. We do have, I think, 3 more people. So if we can go with Hattie first, and then Steve, because both of you asked questions, and then Michael. I think that would be a good order to address the remaining hands up.
Oh, I'm done. You answered my question. I didn't mean to raise it again.
Oh, thank you. Yes, if anybody, I think Greg, you also have your hand up. If anybody who put a hand up can put theirs down if their questions have been answered, I would really appreciate that. It makes it a lot easier to figure out. So looks like we are back on Steve. I think you're next. Can we unmute Steve?
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you giving me the time. Just real quickly, obviously approving this entitlement, as I said earlier, creates tremendous incremental value for the developer. It really should be a burden of the developer to prove why this is necessary, is the thought I would leave with you. I would also ask the staff of the Planning Commission, really, how does this fit with the Nashville Next Plan, which emphasized strongly the notion of downtown neighborhoods? Because to Greg's points and to Hattie's points and others, Rutledge Hill and Lafayette were identified as those downtown neighborhoods. Now all of a sudden comes a developer who happens to own a site and proposes to encroach on those downtown neighborhoods by extending the downtown core. If that's the case, the Planning Commission should approach this comprehensively, not just one block at a time, not creating a gold rush, not creating an opportunity for the Planning Commission to designate winners and losers, but look comprehensively at the boundaries of the downtown core and potentially open it up for full public hearing and look at everything relative to the overall city plan. Because just doing this on a block by block basis, as you and I identified in our series of email exchanges, is pretty uncommon. In fact, I think your comment was that I had asked you to look over the last 5 years at a situation that was analogous, and you were not able to identify any over the course of the last 5 years, which is really the period since the Nashville Next Plan was put into place, of similar types of circumstances. Because what we're talking about here, right, is building the second highest building in Nashville in a downtown neighborhood. So thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to entertain and to air everyone's comments, and look forward to continuing to participate in this process as it unfolds.
Certainly, and I think just to clarify on that, we have exchanged several emails. I believe it specifically in one of those emails, it was asked if there had been kind of an analogous change within the last 5 years with these specific downtown core to downtown neighborhood changes in this particular area, and we weren't able to identify any of those. Just for the group, because I think that was referenced in that, but I just wanted to clarify that it really is only within that time frame and only within kind of this area, this transition between Lafayette, off of Lafayette Street and between Rutledge Hill. So anyway, we can definitely get more questions answered here. I think I have a another hand up. Let's see. I think Michael's hand's up. Can we unmute Michael?
Michael Hayes? Which Michael?
Oh, sorry, Michael Hayes.
Oh, no, you called on me earlier and I asked a question. So,
okay, so
maybe my hand did not go down.
Yes, that was the source of our confusion. So thank you. I appreciate you clarifying that. I'm going to scan the list now to see if there's anything that has not been answered. So I have, let's see, Michael, Hattie, and Greg all have their hands up, but we have established that I think their questions are over. Does anybody else have any more questions or want to raise a hand or type into the Q&A? Maybe we can take a minute just to make sure that we're done with questions, because this is a good opportunity to both give feedback and ask questions.
Yes, Eric, you're not seeing any more hands up right now.
Yes, and it is difficult for us to tell with the virtual public meeting, so we're trying to give you every opportunity.
I am seeing Drew.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, Drew has his hand up. Can we unmute Drew?
Hi, yeah, thank you all, and I appreciate everyone that's presented and the city and all the comments. My name is Drew Turner. I'm with Douglas Development. We're a property owner nearby this site, and we're based in Washington, D.C., and I just wanted to voice my support of the project and also just the support of an overall look at the overall height and density for this part of downtown, given that the boundaries surrounding it, it seems to be a logical step as far as an extension of the downtown core, and also being a Washingtonian, a city that is capped at only 130 feet, so roughly 11 stories, we end up with a lot of large, bulky buildings. And I think the opportunity to have world-class architecture that you're seeing in this presentation now is an opportunity that the city should jump on and continue to support and see that type of great architecture. So I just want to give my support to the team, and I appreciate the work.
Okay, thank you. It looks like Greg has one additional question. We're going to move to Greg. Greg Breitz, if we can unmute him.
Thank you. Just this question is for Mr. O'Connell. What's the best way to get hold of you, sir? I've tried to reach out to you since I became the president of the HOA unsuccessfully, and am curious what it is that I'm doing wrong that has made getting hold of you problematic.
Hey, Greg. Oh, there we go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, and that's on me. We have just had everything about what has happened in District 19, from the responses we've had from COVID, the adjustments we've had to make as a household, going through the end of the year with a bombing, the week of snow that had a lot of digging out to do in District 19. I've gotten all your correspondence, and I do intend to pick it up. I'm actually going to try to get to some of it tonight, so I am aware of it, and I can only apologize for the delay there.
Okay, thank you. I thought maybe there was something wrong on my end. So
no, that is on me. It's just a backlog that I appreciate you reaching out, and so often where I've got, I mean, it's one of those things where when I've worked with a community for longer, I have a rhythm where I go through, Germantown, Hope Gardens, Historic Buena Vista, Edge Hill, all these neighborhoods that I've worked with for a long time, and some of the buildings too, where I've already got things on the calendar, and I just need to get City Lights into my rhythm. So I apologize, and we'll try to get it going for 2021 as a whole, not just this conversation, but all the other issues that you brought up.
Thank you.
So thank you. It looks like we have one more. Oh, Greg, were you going to answer or ask another question?
No, I'm good.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. It looks like Ira has opened or at least raised the hand. If we can unmute, we appreciate that.
Hi, I'm Jack Waddy. My wife and I own the property at the corner of 4th and Peabody. It's called Peabody or Sobro Guest House. We see this sort of thing going to be happening in these districts. And I would suggest, at first I agreed with the idea of let's consider a review of this whole area and how it's going to integrate into the city. But I would suggest to our friends at City Lights, who I'm sure are frustrated by this, that you've still got a heck of a view. And I'm afraid if I were you, you push the idea of considering this whole property area for reconsideration, and you're going to have way more of these buildings than you have now. If you do them one at a time, they're going to be a long time coming. But you get this rezoned. If you ask for it full consideration, I think we're moving in that direction. You just see it all the time. And I just don't think that progress is likely to change. So I would stick with what we've got. We've got a fabulous rendering and opportunity. I mean, you could do a lot worse, let me tell you that. And so I would urge some consideration along those lines, because I think it's an attractive building, and I wish it were available in a tighter area in the core, but there's just not any space there.
Thank you. It looks like we have, I'm seeing the same hands up as before, but I'm seeing one more piece in the chat here. I believe it's about the City Lights project and the history surrounding that and the zoning. I can just speak from, oh, can we mute folks?
Where did I put my hand down?
Can we mute folks for a second? I think there might be some a hot mic going on. Okay, wonderful. Looks like everybody is on here. I think that we can follow up with you, Michael, if that's okay, about the City Lights question via email later. We actually already talked about this with a few folks from City Lights in terms of the history surrounding that project. And although we probably aren't able to answer all your questions, because I don't believe Nora and I were around at that time, we can certainly give you the information that we have regarding it.
Eric, do you mind? I think Michael had another question in there too, just asking what the zoning allows fronting Hermitage. And that, I'm sure you know the answer, but an additional story through bonus height. Ask about the Crema site. So just all along Hermitage, that's what the current downtown code allows. Just
Thanks, Kim. I just want to clarify with everybody. Can I see a nod of heads of folks who were able to hear that? Because I'm just wanting to make sure that wasn't me, but I think that cut in and out.
No, yes, Kim, you broke up, so I think you need to actually repeat your.
I'm sorry. The other part of Michael's question asked what zoning allows fronting Hermitage, and then specifically said that ask about the gas station and the Crema sites, both of which are fronting Hermitage. And in the downtown code, those are Rutledge Hill, and that is 6 stories base height. 1 story is allowed in addition to that for bonus height. And certainly planning can, I've just been dealing with this all day today, so I knew the answer right off the top of my head, but Eric could probably, everybody was clear about what was allowed along Hermitage.
And Kim, we have another question for you. Is the Circle South office only 1 building, and how many stories is it?
I'm going to let Jeff answer that since he's the architect for it, but it is 30 stories, and Jeff can kind of talk through that.
Yes, it is a much smaller site than this. It is 1 tower that is 30 stories tall.
Thank you. That was the only other question I was seeing in the Q&A line, Eric.
Thank you, Anita. I appreciate you helping to manage this. This is a large community meeting. We're really excited that everyone was able to ask questions and get information here. We had 43 people on here, so we appreciate your patience with us managing questions and answers. I don't see any more in this either. Nora, I believe that we might have some kind of closing remarks, and then we can wish everyone a happy weekend.
Yeah, we just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us. And like we said, the community feedback process is really important to, to kind of see how this project can guide and move forward. And like Eric said, no decisions have been made. This is a big piece of the puzzle. So if anyone has any other comments or feedback, my email address as well as Eric's email address were on the notice form. I'll go ahead and put those in the chat here in a moment, and please feel free to reach out. And as was noted at some point, I believe this session or this whole community meeting was recorded. So as soon as we have that link set up of where the recording, when it's uploaded, I believe will be posted on YouTube and easily viewable, shareable, we will certainly also kind of, I think, post that information. Anita, is that correct? Do we typically post a link to it on the downtown community plan page?
We can if there's enough interest. Sometimes they're easy to spot, but we can add a link, make it convenient for people.
Great.
And Nora, if you share it with me, I can make sure folks at City Lights in particular have it as well.
That would be great. That would be great. Thank you, Councilmember O'Connell. That would be excellent.
And do you mind if I share just a couple of closing thoughts as well?
Please do.
So I heard a few things about kind of this site and speaking to the kind of one-off nature of it and also the capacity, like where there might be other sites. I know there was some back and forth discussion around that. I've been talking to planning, last year marked a decade of the downtown code. We heard some of the history here where as Nashville has just generally grown as a city, the urban core has honestly had more capacity than I think anybody could have predicted. Even in 2010, I'm not sure there was a sense that even a community like City Lights would exist with such vigorous sales, right, for an urban community. We had, we started the century with I think 1,000 people living downtown. We've now got well over 10, approaching 15,000. It's a tricky balance to get right at scale in an urban context. I think on the one hand, Nashville Next showed us that most Nashvillians to occur in specific centers, including down along corridors. And one of the things I think we're going to have to do is revisit the downtown code as a whole as a community plan so that we're not continuing to look at these amendments that happen on a case-by-case basis. So appreciate all the feedback tonight. I'm still thinking about this project myself, especially after having seen the details tonight, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with folks. So thank you.
Eric, I think with that, we will conclude the meeting. But yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Councilmember O'Connell, and thank you to the applicant and all of the other folks here who have joined us tonight. We are very glad that we could get a chance to hear your thoughts, your feedback, and your questions.
Have an excellent weekend, everyone.
Thank you.